screen. Let me get the right thing showing here. All right, so just to check in, are you guys seeing the PowerPoint cover slide?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so today it's my pleasure to come and meet with all of you and share a little bit of information about the electronic portfolio. That really is a professional tool that has multi-purposes that we want to cover. It's an exercise that you'll participate in as an academic expectation while you're a student, but really our goal is that this becomes a living, dynamic tool for you to use throughout the remainder of your program of study. Just a little housekeeping before we start. If you haven't muted yourself, if you would, so that we don't have background noise, that would be great. So the objectives that we want to cover today is to identify what are the most common and basic components of a professional portfolio, to talk about some current literature and research evidence that's related to professional portfolios, speak to your assignment that you all will be completing, and following our recommendation would be that you start early and work on it throughout the program of study, but all of you will be submitting your portfolio at the very end. So we'll talk about that, and then to formulate a plan for collection of the materials that are commonly part of your portfolio, and then recognizing some of those first steps to creating an electronic professional portfolio. So I'll begin by taking the word portfolio and breaking it down a little bit. Its roots are Italian. It's an Italian word, and portare means to carry. So it should be portable. It should move with you. And that is what relates to that living document piece. So portare is to carry, and foligio is leaf or sheet. So it's evidence and artifacts that you can carry with you and move and disseminate, is what makes up a portfolio. In the nursing context, a portfolio is an organized collection of professional work that follows the trajectory of your career. So again, what your portfolio looks like today will likely be much different 3 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And the goal is for the portfolio to illustrate your current knowledge, skills, and abilities, and to highlight the experiences that you've had that give you unique distinction and gives credence to your qualifications. So the portfolio is a strategy that's used by professionals to document your achievements, competencies, and learning outcomes. A professional portfolio will capture your developmental data, how you have advanced yourself as a professional over time. So the goal really is to be able to share with another how the composite of your professional experience. It does also offer an opportunity for you during the assembly and continued contributions to your portfolio. Excuse me, I've got to shut my phone off. It gives you an opportunity during that work to really reflect on your professional growth, which oftentimes is very satisfying and fulfilling because you can see how you've reached milestones and how you have formed as a professional and how you've grown. It can also highlight for you where you may have some gaps and serve as a roadmap to those, how you might strategize to seek out continuing ed or formal education, or maybe alternative work experiences to fill in gaps or gain experience. The other thing I'd add is that, I'm going to age myself here, but I graduated with my bachelor's degree from the University of Mary in 1996. All the way back in 96, the University of Mary was employing professional portfolios at all degree levels. So even in the baccalaureate program, At that time, I was expected to assemble a professional portfolio. However, it was not, you know, it was in a 3-ring binder, and it was hard copy and paper. Fast forward to my graduate degree, which I completed a master's at the University of Mary as well. Our expectation at that time, there was kind of a transition. It was still a paper submission. However, technologies and tools had evolved to where it was possible to create something digitally and electronically. And so I remember assembling kind of now it would seem very rudimentary. It was not a web page, and it had to be burnt onto a CD-ROM, but it still gave a dynamic view of a set of artifacts that spoke to my knowledge, skills, attitudes, and achievements. Today, assembling an electronic portfolio, and all of you will be doing this by creating your own personal web page. In addition to being able to demonstrate for a hiring manager or for your faculty, all of the contributions that have led to your competence, your professional competence, it also reflects that you have a 21st century skill, and that you have the ability to engage in technology in this way. And finally, I'd say it's applicable to many, many audiences. Our worlds have changed. We've become much more digital and media related. And so, you know, early in my nursing education, the conversation was if there was a portfolio or not. And now the conversation is more about, is the portfolio, you know, an antiquated piece, you know, several pieces of paper you're flipping through, or is it something that is presented in a really classy way online and inviting and interesting to those that are engaging with it. So being able to create this using technology offers you a set of tools to make it very engaging for the audience that's going to be looking at it. You being able to use electronic files, images, links, multimedia, etc. This is from a research study conducted by Smith in 2013, and I just wanted to share this one quote with you. 50%, or excuse me, over 50% of all hiring managers are more impressed by a candidate's personal website than any other personal branding tool. So let's sit with this a little bit. You're probably thinking to yourself, I don't have a professional portfolio. This is going to be a new endeavor for me. You might be thinking, I hire people and I've never had anybody submit a portfolio. Or you might be thinking this is interesting and I'm excited about it. I would encourage you to really consider all of the ways that an electronic portfolio can project yourself in a really meaningful way and a lasting way with the audiences you choose to share it with. And we're going to talk about some different ways that portfolios are used. I'll give some examples of how I've used my portfolio over my professional career. But you can imagine a resume is oftentimes a one sheet, and they're pretty carte blanche. You get to hear what, academic credential or degree the person is hired. You get to see where their work has been and what they were responsible for while they were there. And there might be a couple of references listed at the bottom, certifications, etc. And when you look from one to one to one for a certain position, many of them begin looking very much the same. Whereas with a professional portfolio, you can make it much more personal, and you can give a hiring manager or someone who's making decisions about your promotion or transfer a closer insight to your, not only your true qualifications, but your style. So hiring managers are going to view your portfolio in different ways. Some might look at just a couple of links within it, but oftentimes how far somebody delves into an individual's professional portfolio does not necessarily always match the degree of impression the portfolio has made on the person visiting it. So despite maybe only looking at a couple of links, they still could feel very impressed by the fact that you've submitted a portfolio, and by looking at a couple of links, recognize, gosh, these are high quality. This whole thing must be great, and making an assessment, a first impression of you. Really, your portfolio can serve in that capacity as well. So the reason I say that is, others will probably look through all pages of your portfolio, and you'll have people in between. The point of that is you want to be disciplined to making all parts of your portfolio squeaky clean and shiny, very clean and professional in appearance, and really representing you in the best way. Because when it's projected on as a web page, you never know which parts of it somebody might be visiting. So you can't remember, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Your electronic portfolio is only going to be as impressive as your least well assembled or well evidenced quality. So this gets back on the right hand side where I'm talking about varying presentation. This gets back to a little bit of the ability that you have as the developer and the author of your own portfolio to create some distinction. You will be able to determine fonts. You'll be able to decide which files and evidence you want to share in your portfolio. You'll be able to select the images, the multimedia, and the hyperlinks. There's a lot of pitfalls and pearls in doing this. And we'll talk about some of those more as we go on. But the first thing I would tell you is oftentimes less is more. Consistency is primary. And so while your font size, you might change, determining if it's a main header or a subheader to be able to help organize and direct people's eyes in the content that you have on a page. It's very distracting and not as professional in appearance if you have multiple different types of font that you're using. So try and select a consistent font. And in terms of images, I would suggest the theme of your images staying consistent. So if you're using, what might be real photos, use those throughout and avoid clip art. And if you're using more of a clip art type of style or image, use that throughout. So there, again, it's building that consistency, and what you're doing through that is building your brand. And then various multimedia types take into consideration, if I'm including perhaps a recording of a patient interview that I did as part of a simulated experience, or perhaps I have a class presentation that I've assembled. Think about the length, think about the quality of the work. You want to select your best work to share with others. And hyperlinks, I would just say you want to keep this super clean. So it's better if you link the text, choose a selective text, highlight it, right click, and insert the hyperlink. In contrast to copying and pasting the URL address and having the whole URL address on the page. It's much cleaner to have a hyperlink than it is to have a full URL address on a page. So the power of an e-portfolio is the ability for it to offer this kind of textured and layered view of your learning and development, as well as your qualifications and competencies. It gives you the opportunity to collect materials, look at them, select what you think is most valuable in terms of creating the argument for whatever competence, knowledge, or skill you're trying to demonstrate you have. Reflect on that and think, gosh, I mean, truly, you will feel a sense of pride as you assemble this. I oftentimes hear from students how they will get to the end of their program of study and they might be going back to pull an assignment from a very, very early course, and they're looking at their writing and they're recognizing, gosh, I really did learn how to become a better writer and have much more accomplished writing skills at this point than I did when I started. And that is very rewarding because it means your education has done what it's intended to do. And then you can start make connections in terms of the, things are never one and done. You don't do one activity and then have competence. So it becomes a collection of things that lead to that. And you can start to see connections in that experience that you maybe hadn't recognized previously. So the purpose of an e-portfolio then is to help you facilitate that personal reflection of your professional preparation, to showcase your skills. It can aid in program review and assessment. So if this is something that's, that kind of takes this on a little bit of a tangent, and takes us to the point of if you had a portfolio that you were using to help assess a program, it's translatable to individual personal professional portfolios, and then it does help you make an assessment of where you are currently in your career path, how you've gotten there and where you plan to go, where gaps might be, and how you might be set goals to fill them in. And then also it is an opportunity to showcase professional standards. For employers, there's lots of benefits to the professional portfolio. It gives them an opportunity to see if you're a cultural fit. You've heard, and many of you've had lots of life experiences. You're a graduate student, you're mature, and probably can appreciate that you will have most satisfaction in your work, and your employer will have most satisfaction in you if there's mission alignment between your personal mores and culturally influenced practices that align with the organization. If you are working in an organization that contrasts your personal characteristics or beliefs, it's much more difficult. So a professional portfolio can help give those insights to an employer, just as their web pages and their mission statements can do the same for you as a future potential employee. It also offers a much deeper insight. Let's face it, we'll go back to that one-page resume. It doesn't really help in that many ways set you apart from others, whereas a professional portfolio really can. A interview, you might get 30 minutes with a hiring manager, and some of us might do very well at projecting ourselves during an interview, and we might be really skilled at thinking on our feet and being able to think of those examples to answer the behavioral questions and the performance questions that were asked. And so if you are, that's great. The portfolio in those instances can only help substantiate that you've shared. For others, the interview, you might find it a bit more challenging to quickly and on your feet think of examples, whereas they will be readily evident and prepared ahead of time with a great deal of thought in a professional portfolio. In addition to that, time limits what we can do, and the portfolio is an opportunity of artifact that you can leave with a hiring manager after you leave, or that you can have in an email and send to them very easily a link to your personal webpage, and that invites them to kick around and explore more about you when it works for them. It might be right as soon as they get it, they hop in and they look, and you've created your portfolio in a way that it has interested them to where they're like, yeah, I'm going to come back to this tonight after work and study this potential employee a little bit more. And then finally, as I said earlier, it substantiates your qualifications. So what kinds of things do we typically include in a professional portfolio? Certainly, it's important to have your personal information, how they can contact you. It would be my suggestion that is in a few places, that it's part of the cover page, the front page of your your portfolio, your electronic portfolio, and then also included in other areas that are going to be frequented easily, so that if they're on a particular area of their portfolio and they're like, yeah, I want to reach out now. What was that? How did I get them again? What's their phone number? What's their email? So oftentimes on a web page, there's an opportunity to have a contact me link, which could be built right into where they just click on that and put what they want, and it sends the email automatically to your inbox from your web page. Another idea is having a common footer or a common header that's part of every main page of your portfolio, so that everywhere they navigate, they'd see that at the top or the bottom. So that's a couple of ideas of how you could do that. The professional portfolio will also have a summary type section that outlines for the person viewing your portfolio, your educational background, your licensure background, and your employment background. So that might be in the form of a embedded resume that you have already assembled. It might be that you create it as content right within the web page. There's lots of options. And then you also have an area that offers supporting documents and substantiates those things that you've described in terms of your education, licensure, and employment. Your actual educational transcripts. I encourage you upload your unofficial transcripts, but then once you get an official transcript with your degree conferred, transition it out and put that official transcript in your portfolio. This gives them an opportunity to look at what kinds of courses have you taken and be able to think, oh my gosh, they took an evidence-based practice and strategic healthcare decision-making course. When I talk to them next, I want to learn more about that course and what kinds of things they've learned, because gosh, we really need somebody to help us with quality improvement projects that are evidence-based. I'm going to talk to them about what our needs are and what tools they've learned about in their program that might make them a good fit for that. So you can see how it can start connecting for the employer as well, the unique experiences you've had in your education to position you well to meet their needs. Also a good place to include licenses or certifications and letters of recommendation. Case logs I include here. All of you are part of or will have taken your leadership course, and you will have logged those hours. Many of you are part of nurse practitioner coursework where you are in clinical and you spend a lot of time entering information in Typhoon. Don't let that be for naught. Don't let the only way that we use that information be for your faculty to look at what you've done. It's an impressive set of information between that leadership log, if you've done it well and outlined your experiences, or your Typhoon entries and the patient encounters you've had, and the skills, the procedures you've been part of. Load it up there. It also helps them see, gosh, over the course of their program of study, they have spent this many hours, or they've seen this many patient encounters, or they've done this many, ear irrigations, whatever it might be. It also gives you an opportunity to include some exemplars of artifacts that you've done, some of your best work in school. And we've seen students include things outside of school as well. Maybe there's something you've done at your place of employment that you want to highlight, or within the community as well, more civic related things. Feedback, I think, is a really good thing to include. In evaluations, many of you will have several examples of evaluations that have been completed on the work that you've done, whether that's written work or clinical work that either a faculty or a preceptor or someone else has provided an evaluation of you. You might even have evaluations from your workplace that you want to include a copy of in your portfolio. Listing your goals is always really good, and you'll find in the assignment guideline, we talk about goals and ask for you to identify short-term and long-term goals. Awards and honors are another section, another set of examples that you can include, professional memberships, and then oftentimes there's reflective narrative, and that will be an expectation of your portfolio as well that we'll talk about. Really, it's important to, when you are a hiring manager, you recognize that oftentimes that role is much like asking somebody to marry you. It's a critical juncture to identify talent and to align talent with the organization to assure you that you've got a good fit, because once employed, you're committed to one another. And so it's really important in healthcare that you're hiring for competence. So your professional portfolio is an excellent way for you to demonstrate your competence. And there's several different levels of competence that you hear us talk about and that you've seen in your syllabi all throughout your program of study. These are not things that we make up or that are loosey-goosey. These have been documents that are prepared by leaders in the profession and leaders in education, and have carefully crafted real life competencies that are necessary in order to be the most qualified and successful in your role. So some of those, starting at the most granular level, would be specialty standards. So for our students in the nursing organizational leadership track, you are going to be looking at the specialty standards of the American Organization of Nurse Executives, or AONE. Nurse practitioners, your specialty standards are written by the national group known as the National Organization of Nurse Practitioner Faculty, and so forth. You can see all those acronyms there. Those professional groups have authored standards specific to the role and the program that you are pursuing. And so you want to be able to speak to them and be able to provide evidence of how you've achieved them. At our university level, we have a set of competencies as well. We ask for you to show evidence of how you've incorporated and grown in the Benedictine values, servant leadership, and graduate outcomes. The graduate outcomes you might remember are moral courage, professional distinction, communication, and the last one's escaping me. What am I forgetting, Debbie? Professional distinction, communication, scholarship. Thank you. A biggie. And then that wasn't a pop quiz, but so thank you I didn't mean to put you on the spot. And then finally, we have program competence. And so our accreditor has written a set of competencies to be met for the academic degree and program. And we have specific program outcomes that faculty have authored for each of the graduate programs that are represented in the menu of options in nursing. So I had referenced the syllabi earlier, and this might be a part of the syllabi that in the past you've just kind of glossed over. I would encourage you to go back and study it a little bit more closely. I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to harvest all of your syllabi and download them from all of the coursework that you've taken previously, that you're in currently, and that you enroll in the future, because these competency tables might prove to be pretty helpful to you as you're assembling your portfolio. Excuse me. What we have done in these competency tables is we've identified by course outcome which competencies across that spectrum of set of various groups that have authored outcomes and competencies, what assignments might help show evidence that you've reached those. So for example, in this particular course, one of the outcomes is utilized evidence-based practice to formulate a pharmacologic plan of care. And your faculty have identified students, if you jump all the way over to the right-hand side column, the method of assessment that faculty are using in that course to see if students have reached that course outcome are the case studies and evidence-based practice presentations. So as a student, I'm thinking, gosh, maybe those are two examples of good artifacts for me to include in my portfolio. And what might they help me meet or show evidence of meeting in terms of competencies? And then I can look at and reference the other columns in the competence table of the syllabi and see, oh, my faculty think that those two speak to scholarship for a university outcome or to evidence-based practice for a CUSIN competency. So those may be helpful. It's not prescriptive. You might have a different gauge or assessment of work that you've done and how it's contributed to your growth and development in a particular program outcome, and you can choose that. I want to highlight for you that there is a grading rubric for the professional portfolio, and I would encourage you to download that and review it top to bottom before you really get too hot and heavy in the work of your portfolio. And I'm going to show you where the rubric and the assignment guideline are for the professional portfolio once we get to the end of this slide deck. There's several different platforms where you can create your own personal web page to house your portfolio. Wix, Weebly, WordPress, those are just a few. By far, the one we see most commonly used by students is Wix. It is, it's fairly intuitive. It is one that we have provided kind of an initial how to get started and the setup of your pages, and I'll show you where that video is as well. It is challenging to keep those videos up to date because every time they update their platform, where things are changes slightly, but you just have to be brave and be bold and click on things, and it's really nothing to be afraid of. Some pearls for you: start early. If you're in your last semester of study, I certainly hope that you've started already. If you haven't, be sure that you're carving out time and dedicating to this. If you're midpoint or early in your program of study, it's not too early to begin thinking about it. Remember that your portfolio is to sell yourself. So put your best image forward. Seek the opinions of others when you assemble it, and really seek their honest feedback. Give them the authority to, ask them, I need your honest opinion because I'm going to be disseminating this to a variety of people that it matters to me. It might matter, it might make a difference for a job or a promotion, etc. Use a professional portfolio. If you don't have a professional head and shoulders shot, you've invested a lot of time, blood, sweat, tears, and money into your academic degree. You owe it to yourself to seek out a professional photo. I think most places you can schedule just a headshot, a head and shoulders shot. Shop around, because certainly there are places where it can be very expensive to do that, but there are other places where it can be very reasonable. So find what works best for you, but do give yourself the advantage of a professional headshot. Plan your layout and then work for it to be consistent. The layout is important because how you think about how it's laid out might be one way. What you need to do is think about, okay, if I'm visiting this web page, is it intuitive for me to think that this is where I would click to go to see what I'm looking for? The most important page of your web page is going to be your home page. We know from the world of psychology that first impressions when you walk in a room and meet someone for the first time happen in the first half a second. We do that because we just look at somebody and the visuals that we get, we're making first impressions. On an electronic portfolio, the home page is what's giving that first impression, and probably people are making decisions about you and assumptions about you based on that home page. So spend some time and make sure that's really good. Include a breadth of work. You'll want to try and include a variety of artifacts that are there, that have diversity in the type of media. So you don't want to have all written work. Work to include some of your PowerPoints, or maybe some of, many of you, I think, did a photo essay in Nursing 510. That also is a really dynamic assignment that shows a lot of skill and can be interesting. So show a variety. Also show a variety, not just in the type of media, but in the type of content you're covering. So if you're, for example, not to pick on the nurse practitioners, but if you're a nurse practitioner student and the only artifacts you show are artifacts related to clinical practice, patient, disease states and etc., it leaves a wide gap of, yeah, but have they gained competence in other really important areas of nursing, such as leadership, professionalism, change management, etc. Provide context to the example. It might make sense to you while you're putting it there, but you need to make that clear for the audience member in a simple way. Take breaks when you're doing this and take a step back. And then when you come and revisit, kind of reassess and judge the work you've done based on all those criteria that we talked about before. Eye-catching images, again, use them tastefully. and to a limited degree, again, usually less is more in this situation. The design is going to be most appealing to the eye of the viewer if it's simple and uniform. Include your bio. You've written, if you haven't already been in coursework where you've been required to write a bio, you will. And that's why we work so hard to make sure that they're very well done. So your bio sketch is something that definitely can be part of your electronic portfolio. And kind of a catchy option to consider is to do a video bio sketch, to where on your homepage, or maybe another unique place you might place it in your electronic portfolio, that it's a video of you introducing yourself to the viewer and inviting them to your portfolio and the purpose of your portfolio. Maybe even highlighting a couple of areas you want to make sure that they visit, so you encourage them to do that. We already talked about making it easy to contact you and having your contact information. Give yourself time for the completion of the portfolio, that when it's done, you have time for a full review of it, to where you might add things, delete things, and be able to rinse and repeat and do that a few times. In your professional portfolio, there's no room for grammatical errors, misspellings, and outdated information. You don't want an expired certification sitting stagnant in your portfolio. Either include the updated certification, or if you didn't update it, delete it, so it doesn't look like you had something once, but you let it go and you didn't keep it up. Consistent font, we already said, and I already talked about a second opinion. I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I've got a captive audience and we're talking about technology and presenting yourself to the outside world through technology. I feel it's important for us to spend a little bit of time talking about your digital footprint. You know, we talk a lot about leading a parallel life, where you have consistency in who you are, regardless of the venue or the setting. And all of you are, you know, you're graduate students. So again, you're already licensed professionals, but I think we can still fall trap, especially with the explosion of social media platforms, in viewing our social media as separate, kind of a, you know, oftentimes it's labeled as that's personal. That's not my professional venue of communication. However, it is still a representation of you. I looked recently at a nursing faculty from another area that might be, you know, does not live in this area, that might be interested in teaching for us. I sleuth. You look around. I want to learn as much as I can about the candidate. And I learned that, yeah, I think she's probably well qualified, but every single post on her Facebook page is a recipe for a cocktail. And you can make your own assessment of what that might mean or not mean to the ability to perform well, but it gives an impression. So a third of employers who scan social media profiles say they've found content that's caused them not to hire the candidate. How you perform outside of the scheduled workday matters. I oftentimes reflect on being an adolescent, a middle schooler, and many of my friends saying, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about me. We fall trapped to that now as you know, we do that in the vein of thinking we're helping build the self-confidence of the individual. And that's not what it does at all. I remember my mom sitting me down on the couch when I had flippantly said one time, well, it doesn't matter what they think. And her sitting me on the couch and standing over me and saying, honey, it does matter what other people think of you. She also was able to teach me that how other people judge me, I need to learn how to be a big enough person that I don't take it personally. But I recognize as well that how I behave and act, what I say, what I do is a reflection of me, and people do make judgments, and it does impact me in my future. So that's a little bit of a soapbox about your digital footprint. Having heard that, I'd ask yourself to kind of sit back and maybe visit your social media platform, see what kinds of things you're talking about or complaining about or rattling off about. Or maybe not. Maybe you've got a really stellar, pristine digital footprint. And it's not to say that I'm perfect either, but it is something for us to continually think about. The other thing you might do is Google yourself. It's interesting to see what comes up when you put your name in the Google search bar. That would be interesting to see. Review your social media posts like we just talked about. Assess your image and work to project your image. You know, I always am so thankful to my faculty who seem to really provide for us in my graduate program an opportunity to think about multiple different aspects of professionalism. And I remember them bringing in lifestyle coach to speak to us about our image. So that might be something you consider as well. Think about who and what you're connected to. How close do you keep that connection? It's not to say to cut people off in your life, but there are certainly we have loved ones or we have good friends that maybe they project themselves much differently in those areas. You have to think about how closely do I connect? Am I commenting on all the things they're saying and engaging in that? Or do I choose not to, but it still doesn't mean that I don't care about them. It just means that I'm not going to participate in that for others to make judgments about me without getting to know me. Get rid of digital dirt. Pause before posting. Is this a post I'd want my patients or my employees or my coworkers or my clergy or my mom to read? Am I being nice? And have I used my manners? It comes down to the simple things, folks. Am I being a reactive or emotional? I really like that that idea of pause before you post, give yourself a break. It's a strategy that we've talked about as a faculty team. Oftentimes we know that when the water gets boiling hot that students are in and they're feeling pressure and things are high stakes, that we oftentimes will get emotional emails. And sometimes when that emotion is deflected to you, it's easy to want to get bristly yourself and shoot something back. That if you paused for a moment and you really tried to take into consideration the whole picture and you waited 6, 8, 12, 24 hours before you responded, how you respond in that time frame versus 5 minutes later is probably going to be far different. A strategy I'll sometimes use is if I'm all heated up and red around the neck, I might write an email and save it, but I don't send it. And because then I get the heat of what I'm talking about on paper, but then after time, I'm able to come back and I'm able to craft those main points in much different ways. And I'm able to be more empathetic and compassionate to the person I'm visiting with. So first and foremost, I'll leave you with this from Larson in 2014. Remember that at all times you're a nurse and you represent your profession. It's not just when you're punched in. That's my soapbox about your digital footprint. And if you give me a moment, I'm going to pause this presentation. I'm actually going to stop sharing for just a moment because I want to pull up a few examples of a professional portfolio for you. And I need just a minute to get to some. I apologize. I intended to do this beforehand, but I ran out of time. So I'm going to go to a past course here. See if I can't get you some examples. Oh, excuse me. In the wrong place. Okay. Almost there, folks. And I'm pulling these randomly, so we'll see. An assortment here. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing again here. If I can find my, where did that go? Okay, here we go. So the first thing I want to point out to you is whatever course your professional, let me take this back. In every single course you're in, there'll be a course homepage that looks similar to this. I'm kind of wonky right now. I'm not sure why. Here we go. So on every course homepage, regardless of the program you're in, the first page you'll see will outline who your faculty are, and there's a consistent set of links on the left-hand side, starting with the graduate nursing handbook, university catalog, etc. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, the last one is the professional portfolio. If you click on the professional portfolio link, which again, you can find in every single course, you'll have some front matter that it's talking about. I'm not sure why these images are broke. We're constantly fixing things because of technology as well, but it gives you a little bit of more background about the professional portfolio, what you're required to do, and you are required to create it as a web page. It talks about there being many free web builder software options that are free. We won't accept portfolios that are created in Canvas. For a few different reasons. Number one, they're clunky, they don't look professional, and they don't move with you. When you graduate, now they're dead. It's nothing you can continue to add to, and it's challenging, if not impossible, for you to share it forward with employers. So the first thing I'd have you do is look at the professional portfolio guideline and grading rubric. So if I click on this link right here, it downloads a copy for me, and it will outline for you the guidelines for the portfolio. Let me bring it over here. So again, more information. It gives you the web diagram, and how that can be helpful is when we look at some examples here now, you're going to see some common terminology. So your very first homepage, you can only come to one place. So you come here, and maybe these are the things you include on the homepage. And on the homepage, you have a link to several other pages. If you set it up this same way as we're providing as a suggested option, you'll have 4 tabs on your homepage, one for qualifications, one for evidence of growth, one for highlights, one for contact. Your qualifications page will then have several options or links below it where you might have an assortment of this information. And your evidence of growth, maybe you have it broke down into these pages where you're talking about professional level growth, university level growth, and programmatic level growth. At the end of this is the grading rubric. Again, this is what I recommend reading top to bottom. And now, having shown you kind of that layout, I'm going to take you to a couple of examples. These are recent graduates. And here is the home page of the first example I'll show you. You can see front and center, the name and the credentials are shown. I'm just looking at these. I'll provide you a little sidebar here. The appropriate way to list your credentials is to list your highest earned degree first, then your licensure, and then your certification. So for me, for example, my highest earned degree is a DNP. So I'd have Billie Madler, comma, DNP, and then my licensure is APRN, comma, and my role is family nurse practitioner. So I put FNP. And then I have a special distinction of being a fellow of the American Association of Nurse Practitioners. So the credential of FAANP I can include as well. You might have a certification CCRN or CDE or something like that, that you could include as well. Then you can see she has several links to different pages on her website, and she has a contact page. It's simple in color. It says what this page is showing and breaks it down for you. So there's lots of different ways you can lay this out, and you'll see different examples. This might be appealing to you, very straight lines, no imagery used on these pages. Whereas you'll see other options in the other examples. So this is the home page. I'm going to click on the qualifications page so you can see again. So it outlines where the education was achieved, provides licensure and certification, clinical experiences that were done, and you can see visually how it's well organized to where your eye is drawn to separate categories of experiences and then descriptors of those. Goals. Again, visual text boxes with a little bit different background color to outline it for you. And then on this one, she inserted an image and a quote. Highlights page. So she shared top the scholarly work, the DMP project for her particular program was the grand poobah of the work. Personal evaluation, so what others have said about her and her work, and included who they were, their credentials, and where they were from. You can see how powerful and meaningful this is, and isn't something that you likely would be able to share in an interview. So some examples here for you is her detailed clinical practice work. Outlined where she went, her examples of typing cases so we can download, and she has her set up. This is a thing to think about. She has her set up so it opens in a separate link. That can be really helpful. If you have it open in this same page, then it can be a little bit harder for the viewer to navigate back to your page. So I like that when the hyperlinks open separate pages. And you can see this nice visual where as a hiring manager, I'd be able to see, gosh, look at all, she's had a significant number of patients that she's seen across all age categories. And I get some nice visuals. So that is available for nurse practitioner students in Typhon. And then this could also be a place where you include your nursing 614 leadership log. Okay, so that's one example. I'm going to take you to a second. Kayla Holzer, another recent graduate. You can see she included a picture of herself on her homepage. We can see how the color scheme is a little bit different, but the consistent, she still has those 5 additional pages where when we hover over, the drop down is a little bit different, you can see. And then she's got an email contact and her name again at the bottom, a little bio sketch at the beginning. If I click on her qualifications, she has, instead of making a hyperlink to a resume, she included it, embedded it within her page. Now, this is a little bit clunky because instead of going to a separate page, it just navigated me to the bottom of this. So as a viewer, if I want to see the other stuff she had, if I didn't know it was up there, I might have forgot it. And for me to get to it, I have to scroll back up and click on the next one. So that's something you want to really keep in mind is how you're structuring this. Whereas with this page, it opened a whole new page and the basic navigation for the whole site stayed at the top. And here you can see how she laid out her goals. And then her evidence of growth. Now, can you see this jumped out to me? We've got a different font and a different look, different colors that are added in here. I would suggest that, you know, I'd provide feedback that maybe you want to stick with the same style as your other pages. You can see how she provided the scientific foundation is the competence she's talking about here. She describes the artifact she's showing and what it did for her. And then she includes an example of it, which again, hyperlinks to a different page and we can see her work. So that's another one. Let's look at one more. This is yet another student. You can see the navigation pages here, how she introduces herself. You can see how there's some, you know, this would be This would be something that if you saw as a hiring manager the first time, you might think, oh, we got detail, we got to look at details here. So you want to go over this with a fine tooth comb and have somebody else do it as well, because for this to be the very first thing you see, you may or may not pick up on it, but it stuck out to me. The other thing I'd say, you want to do things to scale. So her image, she's got all this space below it with text still here. So you want to balance things and all this blank space on either side. So look at these things with that kind of eye. Here's her bio sketch below, which if I was up here, if I didn't know there was more down here, I might get to here and not scroll down here. So again, being conscious of, if I'm going to go to the work of putting it there, am I laying it out in a way that people are actually going to get there and see it? Okay, and let's look at her qualifications page. So for this student, instead of embedding it, she linked to, and so you'll have to make your own assessment if you think that is as visually appealing and as engaging, if people would be as apt to open links or if they view it right within page. Evidence of growth, she talks about Benedictine values. This is built in with Wix to have this kind of funky, fun movement that can build interest and create a section header. And then you can see the narrative she's included. So those are some examples, guys, and we're coming up on 1 o'clock really quickly. I want to pause and in this last 3 minutes, take any questions you might have for me. Does anybody have any questions?
Dr. Madler, this is Jackie Kramer. This might be a question for Deborah. She said this was going to be recorded. I'm wondering where we could find the recording after the end of our meeting today.
That's a really good question. And our admin is not here today. She'll be back on Monday, I believe, and she will save it. And I think she'll email it out to everybody. And then wherever she saves it to, also, we can let you know. I like to take it and put it in my courses. I don't know that all instructors do that. Do you know, Dr. Madler?
Yeah, usually the file size for the video recording is too big to email. So we save it to the server and create a link and then distribute that to faculty to share out in a course announcement. So I think that's probably the way we'll go again this time. And then we do have, if we come back to your, let's see if we get back to homepage and go to the portfolio page. We also would be able to insert that recording on this page of every homepage. So watch for it through course announcements and then being added on this page once Melanie gets back. I also want to say, I want to highlight and call out to your attention on this creating your electronic professional portfolio page. This link down here is another video that I created a couple of years ago that helps you walks through the initial steps to get your Wix. This is using Wix, so getting your Wix site set up. Now, we do sometimes get a question because there is an option to purchase Wix, which gives you more bells and whistles and, you know, whatever. It's not necessary. None of the ones I showed you are a paid subscription. Those are all built through the free application. Any other questions?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your insight into this. And students, I hope that you can use this and come up with a wonderful, wonderful portfolio that's useful in this class and in your future.
Thanks, Billie. Thanks, Deb.
Yep.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.